driving down Granville Street not too long ago, stuck in traffic for about 15 minutes, heading toward Broadway. It was midday. I was patient and I was irritated, both at the same time. Once I got past it, I decided to take Seymour Street instead of Beach Avenue, my normal route. When I came off of the Granville Bridge onto Seymour Street, I saw more traffic. Then I saw more construction, and then I saw the truck. Before I even registered what I was looking at, the words were already out of my mouth. There's always something with this fucking city. What I caught after was that the story wasn't about the truck. My brain had already built a prediction from the 15 minutes I had just spent in traffic. The moment the truck appeared, my attention went straight to it. I absorbed it. The feeling started to feel like it was coming from out there, from the truck, from the city, from the traffic, because I'd lost the space between where I was and where the truck was, so I reminded myself of it. The literal gap between me and the truck. Me here, truck there. Not the same thing. They're separate. That space is where I found my way back. Not to calm, just to noticing that the story was mine, not the truck's. Observe. Don't absorb. That's where I am now. And if you've ever known exactly what you should do in a moment and done the opposite anyway, let me tell you where I started. Before this goes where it goes, it gets to a very heavy place. Stay with me. There was a surge. It came fast. The first thing I did was fight it. Looking back now, watching that version of me from the outside, I can see what was actually happening. My brain had built the anger itself into a threat, so I met it with more anger, defensively, and that loop had no way out. Every time I pushed against it, it got louder. I was confirming to my own nervous system that there was something worth fighting, that this was an enemy. I want to be straight about how I'm saying this. I'm not describing what anger does in general. I'm describing what I can see now was happening in me, looking back. At the time, I had no observer. It was just a surge, and whatever came after it. This started when I was a kid. Same loop, something that felt like it took over, like it didn't belong to me. I just had no name for any of it. Without language, the experience didn't go away. It dissociated. I floated through life as things happened to me rather than things I was inside of. No weight to any of it, just moving through. And then I found people where anger made sense, where it had a place. And the floating finally had somewhere to land, somewhere I could finally express it to the world that I thought had taken something from me. But it was a cycle. I was projecting the anger outward in different ways, never actually reaching the thing underneath it, never reaching the child who felt violated and betrayed. It took a therapist asking me one direct question. Did you ask for him to touch you? I said no. And in that answer, I understood for the first time what my body had been carrying. I'm not going to go further into the detail. What matters is what it demonstrated. That without language, an experience doesn't go away. It circulates. It floats. And eventually finds a form. In my case, for a long time, that form was anger. And that anger led somewhere. Unprocessed experience doesn't stay still. It keeps moving. Eventually it moves towards whatever exit is available. There is no honor amongst thieves, which is why I was caught with a gun. I was looking at 3 to 5 years. Not going to go further into that. Not because I'm protecting myself, but because the specifics aren't what's useful to you. What's useful is this. The anger started as a child trying to reclaim something. That same anger had consequences. Real ones. The kind that almost ended everything. Standing there, alone with all of it, I knew something had to change. Not as a decision I made with my head, in my body. The kind of knowing that doesn't give you a chance. For the first time, I stopped looking outward for what to fight. But leaving that world is not as simple as it sounds. You can physically leave the underworld instantly, sometimes within 24 hours. But it can take years for the underworld to leave you emotionally. Sometimes it will never leave you. And when I left, I started with yoga, hot yin yoga, which is basically learning to sit in discomfort without moving. I wasn't looking for peace. I was trying to figure out how to stay still. Then I started working with children. And during that, something started coming up. Not in them, but through them. Things I had put away. Experiences I had filed as just how it was. That turned out to have shaped me in ways I hadn't looked at. Seeing them made me look at myself. That led me to therapy. Not one crisis. A slow recognition that I had ignored an entire chapter of my own story. And once I started looking, it became clear. A lot of what I was living came from patterns in my own childhood, where the foundations had been laid for me. Then the pandemic hit. Everything external stopped. I lost a cat right before it started, too. and there were complications from a past life in the underworld that didn't just disappear because I wanted out of it. So I went into the pandemic with grief I'd never processed and a legal weight I couldn't escape. What was left was just me and everything I had been carrying. Eventually the charges were stayed. The legal chapter closed, but the work I had started, that didn't stop. The following year, I moved to English Bay right beside the ocean. I don't have a clinical explanation for what it does. I just know that it spoke to something deeper in me when I was silent with it. The sound, the feeling, something larger that wasn't asking anything from me. That's where I started doing these exercises. I wasn't looking for a parenting framework. I was trying to understand what was happening in my own body for the first time with enough space to actually ask the question. I had found a website. It had shown me these sensory exercises, ones that would help me notice what's outside of me first, the sound, what I could see, then gradually what was happening in my body. It was the first time I'd ever deliberately paid attention to what my own nervous system was doing in real time. Specific shifts happening through my senses, not vague feelings. A tightening, a temperature shift, how I was holding my own weight. Learning to notice those signals accurately was the first time I had real information about what was happening before the story took over. Then I looked deeper into perceptual systems research. Then came Barrett's constructional lens. I didn't study these in a classroom. I came across them when I was doing my own healing work. And what happened when I read them is that they named something I'd already been experiencing in my own body for decades. That's a different thing from learning a theory. That's recognition. I didn't come up with this. I found it. And it fit because it was already true in my own experience before I had the framework to actually describe it. One of the practices I do every night, a hearing to interoception exercise, listening to sounds inside my body, my organs functioning, my heartbeat, sitting in silence until I can feel all of those. Not forcing it, just noticing it's there. What that built over time was familiarity. I remember not long ago, I got pulled over. I wasn't living that underworld life anymore. But the moment I saw the lights, that underworld prediction came back, fast, and I could feel my heart pounding, hard, and I felt it immediately. Not because I was thinking about it, because I had spent years learning what my own heartbeat feels like from the inside. So instead of absorbing into the lights, into everything the situation used to mean to me, I noticed my heartbeat. I reminded myself the body signal is real. The prediction it's building, that was from a past time, not this moment. My insurance had expired. That was all. I brought the temperature down. Enough to know that the prediction wasn't accurate. That's what the practice actually builds. The ability to notice what's happening in your body before the story takes over completely. And during a lot of this work, especially when I had found these sensory exercises, I wanted to build an after-school program teaching kids emotional intelligence. And when I was working with children, I saw something I hadn't expected. Every single thing that they were struggling with, I recognized. Not because I'd read about it, because I had lived it. My therapist kept pointing back to the same place. Your childhood. Your home. And so when I started conceptualizing this emotional intelligence after school program for children, and I got halfway through it, I realized it wasn't the answer. The answer is the parent's nervous system. That's where the map of a child's emotional foundation gets laid. That's the thermostat. That's when the toolkit became what it is. There's a quote I first heard when my mother was in the ICU. You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. I didn't fully understand it then. The knowing arrived years before I had any capacity to live it. That gap between knowing something is true and actually being able to use it, that's what it looks like when the body hasn't caught up to the insight yet. In the spring of 2021, after I was doing one of those exercises, something had shifted. There was a memory that came up, the first time I had ever felt empathy as a child. When that memory came back, it felt like alignment, true presence. Like I'd come back to something in myself I hadn't accessed in a long time, my own body. That was the first time the research stopped being research and became something I'd actually lived. I'm still in EMDR. The thermometer hasn't settled completely, but the temperature has come down. I can notice the surge rising now in a way I couldn't before. That noticing, that small gap between the signal and the story, is the whole thing. That's where choice lives. Back on Seymour Street, seeing that truck, that gap was the difference between there's always something with this fucking city being the end of the moment and me being able to notice that the story was mine, not the trucks, not the cities, not the traffics, mine. I brought the temperature down. Not because I'm fixed, because I've been practicing noticing the temperature rising before it runs the moment. Your nervous system is the thermostat in a room. It doesn't control what your child constructs from the temperature, but it changes what they have to work with. That's what it means to be a cycle breaker. Not perfect, different. The child didn't get harder. Your body budget was lower going in. The role got more complex, and somewhere in that complexity, have you checked in with the human being behind the role? When was the last time they actually had the rest? I'm not talking about sleeping or alone time. I'm talking about silence from within. The toolkit I built isn't based on something I invented. It's based on what I used on myself when I had no other option but to figure it out. Perceptual systems research, Barrett's constructional lens, run through the filter of my own lived experience, and test it on the person who needed it the most. 7 PDFs and 8 audio tracks that teach you to notice the signal before the story takes over. Not a cure, not a clean ending, a practice. The Body Signals Toolkit is in the link in the bio. If you're not ready for that, the 3.5-minute presence reset is also there. Free. Start there. Presence. Clarity. Choice.